Hey everybody, welcome to today's live Q&A from Haggerty Dog Training here in Midland Park, New Jersey. I have a lot of great things to talk to you about. I hope I can get through them all. I'm going to quickly go over quite a few things, and I'll cover more in depth in the coming weeks. Stay tuned. I am working on a couple of very special guests. I'm hoping that Tony Anchetta is going to join us for our Saturday night with dogs in the next couple of weeks, and I'm waiting to confirm that with him. And we will have some more in the coming weeks, in the coming months, I should say, of some great dog people on Saturday nights, just talking about dogs. So the first thing I want to talk about, which is on the tip of everybody's mind, is President Biden's biting German Shepherd. Now, truth be told, I didn't completely follow the story, just a little bit, and I'm just going on some information that was passed along to me. He has two German Shepherds, Major and Champ. I'm not sure. I know one is about 13, and the other one is a much younger dog that is a rescue dog. And I think the older dog was actually purchased from a breeder. I'm not sure which dog it was that bit him. And, I meant to get more details on this. And some people have mixed feelings, but this is just about the German Shepherds. And I saw a brief interview or article quoting their trainer in DC, their trainer in Delaware. But I guess it's going to be taking the dog back. And, my hat is off to this trainer. I don't know who he is. I know nothing about him. But everybody's pointing the finger at him and they want to blame the trainer. But you also have to look at the people that are around these dogs, who's handling these dogs or maybe mishandling these dogs. It's not always the trainer. It's the people who are managing and taking care of the dogs. I do want to point out, however, that there was something that somebody had said. I forget if it was online or in a paper or something. And they said something to the effect of, the dogs were just not used to the chaos of the White House. Well, that tells me something, one, about the temperament of the dogs, which I've spoken about briefly in the past, and I'll talk about more about that in the coming weeks. But think about this. I know he had at least one of those dogs during the time he was our vice president. And I'm sure his house, when he served as vice president under Obama, I'm sure it was pretty chaotic. And someone said, oh, well, he was in just an average house in Delaware the last 4 years. I find it hard to believe that President Biden does not have a lot of staff running around the house, a lot of people coming in and out before he was president, as well as now that he is president. Of course, yes, in the White House, I'm sure it's been taken up a notch, but I'm sure that there have been signs in the past that these dogs maybe not great. I mean, it is a German Shepherd. He is protecting his property. I know nothing about the bite. I haven't seen the bite. I don't know the details of this bite. Apparently the employee continued to work the rest of the day, and and he was fine. So, again, we don't know any details. So let's not point our fingers at anybody. It sounds like they did the responsible thing and got the dogs out of the situation, and they're reaching out to their trainer. And hopefully all of the hands on these dogs, when the dogs do go back to DC, hopefully that they will be responsible. I'm sure the dog trainer is going to give them very good advice, and hopefully they'll listen. My dad used to call something his 3,000-mile diagnosis. And I'd get on the phone with him and I'd tell him a story, and I'd be 30 seconds into the story and knew exactly what was going on. So I can tell you my diagnosis, and I'm not 3,000 miles away from DC, is that these dogs probably need some work, but the owners are probably not doing everything that needs to be done. And no offense to them, but everyone that's around these dogs and managing these dogs need to absolutely stay on top of these dogs and listen to their trainer. I'm sure the trainer is going to give them some good advice. German Shepherds are great dogs. However, they're not always the easiest dog for owners, and you really have to know what you're doing. And some dogs you just have to stay on top of. So we'll move on to the next thing. So I came across somebody's website the other day, and I know I have dog trainer friends and dog trainers who are my friends that I haven't met yet that watch my show. And I'm going to tell you what my big pet peeve is. When I go onto another dog trainer's website and they don't know how to spell a breed properly. especially when it's an easy breed like German Shepherd. If you went to dog trainer school or you read a book on dogs, and I hope you read at least more than a book, you probably have seen how to spell German Shepherd. German Shepherd properly is, and I'm going to put it in the comments, Shepherd. It's a sheep herding dog. It is not a German Shepherd or a Shepherd with two P's, A-R-D. You know, when dog owners misspell dog breed names, you know, I can cut them some slack. But if you're a dog trainer, please learn how to spell the dog breeds properly, whether it is a German Shepherd, whether it is a Mastiff, which I think is a pretty easy breed to spell out, or it's a Xoloitzcuintli. At least know how to spell these breeds out. A Peruvian Inca dog. You should know how to spell all of these breeds. If you're going to be training dogs, know how to spell the breeds properly. That's super important. You know, if you went to a cardiologist, how would you feel if he was misspelling heart? You'd kind of think like, well, okay. Now, granted, he doesn't need to know how to spell heart to perform heart surgery, but you know, something's off there. So that's just my little pet peeve, and I needed to get out there on that. All right. So a trainer had written in last week. He was concerned he was working with a dog that was resource guarding quite a bit. And he said, you know, I'd really like to bonk the dog. The bonker, for those of you that don't know, I'm just looking around because I know we have a bonker around here somewhere. It's in the back. It's a t-shirt or a towel rolled up. And when the dog does something they shouldn't do, you just throw it at the dog. It startles the dog. It doesn't hurt the dog. It scares the dog. It interrupts the bad behavior. And he said, you know, I don't know if I should use this. I'm afraid of, you know, correcting the dog in front of these owners. Well, I'm going to share a story that I've shared in the past. Many years ago, this was back in '94, I had attended the first conference of a dog trainers association that will stay nameless. And, you know, they were all talking about the new way to train dogs, all positives, only food. And I sat there with my dad, and my dad said, yeah, you know, they told me this in the 50s. They told me this in the 60s. They told me this in the 70s, and in the 80s, they were telling me the same thing. And here it is, the 90s, and they're telling me it's the new way to train dogs. So when I left that conference, you know, I was interested in finding out, does this way really work? I'm not saying it never works, but I'm speaking general, and I'm just talking about my experience right now. I had a family that called me up. They asked me to come out. I spoke to the breeder beforehand, and the breeder said, do not use corrections on this puppy. It's a 10-week-old Rottie puppy. Do not use corrections. And I thought, all right, I'm going to do it his way. That's the way he wants it. The owners wanted it that way. They had a horrible nipping problem with this puppy. It was annoying. It was annoying, to say the least. These were older people too, so they were getting the age where their skin could possibly start to tear. And, you know, in my opinion, the problem needed to be stopped immediately. And I could stop it immediately with a correction. You know, that's that bad word. It's called a consequence. You do something wrong, you get a consequence. You blow through a stop sign, you get a speeding ticket. You get a ticket for blowing through a stop sign. It's called a consequence. You touch a hot stove, you get burned. It's a consequence for touching the hot stove. You nip my hand, I correct you. It's called a consequence. It's not beating a dog. It's just a consequence. It's an interrupter. So I left this lesson. I gave them their lesson, and I thought, oh my God, I could have stopped this problem like 45 minutes ago. And the puppy is still nipping, and we're doing all of this positive stuff, blah, 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 blah. I go home. Before their second lesson the following week, they call me up and they said, we're canceling our training. We're sending the dog back. We can't take this nipping anymore. And I thought to myself, you know what? I failed that dog. I failed that dog, and I failed that family, and I failed them because I didn't do the training the way I know it would work. And, you know, the breeder did fail the dog too, because if the breeder allowed me and wasn't so adamant about letting me correct the dog, that breeder wouldn't have, you know, the puppy back in his hands and having to find another home. These were lovely people. They were more than happy to work with this dog, but they just could not do this all positive. They needed the problem solved right away. And this particular case with this trainer that reached out to me, this dog is resource guarding. You don't need to wait until the dog grows out of it, ignore it long enough, or the problem to get worse, or the owners send the dog back to wherever it came from. You need to solve that problem right away before their niece comes over and gets bitten in the face. It is super important. And, you know, my feeling is if you need to correct the dog and you're a dog trainer, do not be afraid. Your owners are going to appreciate it because you're giving them more value for your money. You don't have to go out there 22 times and maybe solve the problem. You can go out there maybe once or twice, boom, problem solved, dog is good, the dog gets his home. So now I have one of my lovely Zoe. Just have to add, I'm tuning in, and one of the dogs at Haggerty just barked. Zoe was under my desk at my feet, and she jumped up and started barking. Zoe, don't do that. You know, Sharon, I have to tell you, I don't know if you realize that next week is a year that we actually met you and Zoe, because we're coming up on a year that Governor Murphy had shut us down because of COVID. And you and I met, we did a lesson, Zoe's training had to get pushed back. And I was so proud of you because we met via Zoom and you were working with Zoe. Every week we were meeting via Zoom and you just kept working with Zoe. And I have to say, Zoe is one of the nicest dogs that comes in here each week. She's just a lovely doodle and we love her. She's sweet. All that early training you did, even though, you know, you were in lockdown and she couldn't come to day school right away, it really paid off and it showed. So I just want to give you a shout out because you did right by her. She's a great dog and we love her. Now, one of my trick students, one of my trick class students that I was doing online, Lou, I'm so glad this was helpful to you. I'm glad you're on here. One of my trick students, Teresa from Virginia, wrote, Maddie has been weird about the tunnel all of a sudden. I tried luring her around. Now she's running away and she's refusing to go near the tunnel. How many refusals should I accept before stopping? I don't want you to count the number of refusals before you stop. I've actually seen Maddie since then, and she actually got her Trick Dog Novice title the other night. But since Teresa wrote to me, you know, Maddie's recovered. But what I had told Teresa to do is that it's not necessarily that I want you to wait until she gives you more refusals. Just start going back to the basics. Get her working around the tunnel. Lay some treats around the tunnel. Get her used to being near the tunnel again. And then as she moves closer and closer and she's not balking at the tunnel so much, then start throwing the treats in there. And you know what? She did that, and 2 days later, she passed her Trick Dog Novice test. So we're really happy for her. And kudos to Maddie and Teresa for doing that. And Oliver also graduated the other night from the trick class. Thank you, Sharon. Let's see, what else do I have? Okay, so this text came in. If you have a dog, a 1-year golden doodle, now around a 6-month-old rescue pup, now is aggressive towards other dogs, and is it the dog protecting the puppy? So there could be a few things around here. I did speak to the owner because this note wasn't clear enough. So I asked her, you know, is she walking these two dogs together? Could the dog be protecting the puppy? Possibly, but I'm going to guess now. It goes back to that 3,000-mile diagnosis that I told you guys about. Sometimes you just get a feeling when you're training dogs long enough, you just know. And it's something that develops with years of practice. Anyway, I digress. So I had said to her, I said, you know, I have a feeling you're probably restraining her and holding the leash. The other thing is the history on this 1-year-old golden doodle also lives in another household that has 4 children and a single mom, and it sounds like a pretty chaotic situation, and they haven't done any training with this 1-year-old dog. So, you know, good training would help this. I'm going to guess that the person that wrote to me and is walking 2 dogs at a time, she's restraining the dogs. And whenever you restrain the dogs, what ends up happening is you're teaching the dog to become bolder and bolder. They're going to bark more and more and more. And that's probably one of the things that's happening. Also, you know, when a dog hits a year of age, they start becoming a bit more bolder. They're not so independent. They're not so dependent on you. They're not so innocent anymore. You know, they're in the midst of adolescence, or they could be coming out of adolescence into adulthood. And they don't have to listen so much. And if they've never had to listen, they've never received any kind of discipline, then that will carry on into adulthood. And, if you ever met somebody who really never learned to be nice to people, it's kind of like a dog. If they never learned how to behave properly, they'll continue to not behave properly into adulthood. It's not growing out of it. That doesn't happen. You have to discipline the dog. You have to train the dog. And when I say discipline the dog, I'm not talking about being mean to the dog. Teaching the dog right from wrong, just like our parents taught us right from wrong. Say please and thank you. Hold the door. Let people go in front of you. Not pushing past people and being rude or being snotty on the phone when people ask you a question. So it's just called discipline, and good manners is all that it's about. So I know I whipped through a lot. I had quite a few things I wanted to cover this week, but I'm whipping through them because I do have to pop off here because I do have a 2:00 appointment and I have a quick phone call to make to one of my owners that has dirty dog syndrome. And if you think you have it, go onto my YouTube channel. There's a great video on how to address dirty dog syndrome. And I'm just looking, I want to make sure I haven't missed anybody's questions. Doesn't look like I have. And I think that's it. So I thank you guys for tuning in. Next week, we'll be back at 1:30 again on Thursday. And I will have more information on our Saturday Night Live with dogs at that time. And until then, everybody stay safe. Enjoy. I hope you're having beautiful weather because we're finally getting beautiful weather in New Jersey. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.